back doing this.
Who knew? We're back.
I'll dig out for Josie our first ever time and put them side by side. I think
This
see
is
what 10 years of HubSpot and a few years of parenting does to a man's face.
a steady decline into insanity. Yeah.
Oh, cool. We're coming through nice. Valerie has messaged me on Slack. Yes, and an exclamation mark. So that's probably the most energy you're going to get in this 30 minutes. But we'll just give people a couple of minutes. The LinkedIn notifications will be saying we've now gone live to the people who've registered. So we'll give them a chance to grab their lunch if they're in the UK, or probably finish their lunch if they're abroad. What are you having for lunch?
Not sure. Don't know.
Mortgages.
Yeah, just
Mortgage paperwork.
some sort of antipasti cheese. I'm thinking quite a bit of cheese. What about you?
Very, very nice, very nice. Scrambled egg and toast. I'm out for tea for the first time in 9 months. We're going out for dinner without the children.
Nice.
We've got 2 hours.
Drink as much as possible. Eat as much as possible.
Yeah. Valerie, I know you're listening. I can see Slack. I'm very much enjoying the live count of how many people are watching. 2 people watching, probably Josie and I. 5 watching, 13 watching, 15 watching. Right, so we best get started. So, I'm joined this session with Andrew, my long-time colleague, 10 years in the HubSpot game. Till recently, your job title was CRM Director and you led our global CRM services. Hence, the perfect guy to talk about keeping your HubSpot CRM fighting fit. Fun fact about Andrew, he was working with one of our clients last week, away from home for the week. Not saying this is linked to how much time you spent in the hotel bar, Andrew, but you bought a house without viewing it. Is this true?
Those two things are quite well linked. That's all I'll say. It's worked out well. Let's leave it there.
Well, if your buyers go on a longer buying journey than Andrew did for his house, you're going to need a well-managed CRM.
Nice.
That's nice, that, wasn't it? You can tell we've been doing this for a while. So, joking aside, you do know your way around HubSpot CRM and have managed and worked with lots of clients, and you're a better man than I when it comes to talking about HubSpot CRM features.
Thanks.
So, yeah. That's
nicest thing you've ever said.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, we've got 17 people watching, so got to be nice. Yeah, really, as you could tell, we've worked together a while, and you do know your way around the strategy and finding out what challenges are for clients. So we've got a series of questions. Please do drop questions in the chat. We've got some pre-prepared ones that we know are common, but we always want to dive into actual questions as well. So we'll just start broad and tell us then we'll dive in deeper onto specifics. But what are the biggest challenges, common challenges you see from customers when it comes to keeping the CRM in good shape?
The main, I was thinking about this going into it, and there is so many things you can talk about. Ultimately it's users, it's the people putting the data in or the systems putting the data in. But I think the biggest problem is that balance and that back and forth between being in our world, if you're an admin, the sort of enticement to be a data quality absolutist. There's all the tools in the world to really lock it down and make it perfect. But the problem is doing that and then reducing the engagement, stalling a process at the very early stage for what you're actually using the CRM for, which is growth, accelerating sales and marketing. So the problem is deciding where you want to put your stake in the ground. Do you want to lock it right down and have validation on the front end form before it even gets in there? Do you want to have some dashboards and nice visuals to sort of tidy it up at the end of the week or month? Or do you want something in between that blocks deals being moved once they're in? And you can kind of pick your own journey, but the problem being is you got to know your team, you got to know your business and your users. And as somebody who is managing a CRM, that is ultimately, it comes down to that behaviours and you know, getting activation and engagement with the platform. I think HubSpot's great, any CRM's great if no one uses it and cuts corners anyway. All of those fancy workflows and, you know, rules you're putting in place are kind of useless. So it's a bit of a back to front answer on when we're talking about how to have a really like hygienic CRM. Start there and decide how hygienic you want to be and need to be for like what's critical, and actually genuinely challenge yourself on that. Um, so that I'd start there. I could keep going on and on and on, but I'll just say that is where I'd say is the biggest challenge is doing the homework and actually don't just set HubSpot up for you and your boss. Like speak to the users and actually get in touch with them. Wow, monthly maybe. You know, speak to the team, speak to the sales team, the marketing team, and actually get some feedback and kind of just continuously balance it and adjust so that people enjoy and want to use the system. Is what I'd say.
And
And that's
agreeing,
hard. That's the
yeah,
challenge.
that's the challenge. Getting people to use it as well when it's a new tool, I imagine, is pretty common as well. Sort of, oh well, we've used
Yeah.
this for
Well,
forever.
I mean, that's it. You can absolutely sink or swim on that. If you do start off too heavy-handed, HubSpot's really easy, but it's not as easy as not using any tool and just going straight to the next step, you know. So you got to be careful there. And I think again, not only doing the retros monthly, quarterly on how it's set up, but before you go into that, and this is what we do all day, every day, is actually speak to teams and strategize what's the furthest the sales team are willing to go, and what's the lowest everybody else is willing to go in terms of what they can pull from it, and you kind of meet in the middle and sort of work from there.
So get that strategy sorted, or set the expectations as well internally of what you want from it and what you want it to do. What about once you're rolling with it? Could you give us some tips for making sure that your CRM is then delivering value, whatever that strategy and expectation is, and that adoption pace of your team? What are some good habits to get into as a company with your CRM?
Yeah, so I think let's say you get through that first launch piece and you're in there and everyone's using it to the sort of expected frequencies. I think the good habits are those regular reviews of what's gone in and what's happened to that data. If we just talk about the CRM itself rather than the goals and outcomes of the teams using it for now, although that is what I'll end up at. I'd be looking at how many records have come in and if we are allowing data to be skipped or left out at some time, like how long are properties being left blank, are they being progressed without the relevant data. You can block that. If you don't want to block it and you want to allow people to have a bit of flex, you want to set up those reports and have that visible, like
Why
visibility.
why does that help? Why is that a good thing to have rules or prompts on that?
I mean, either way, let's just say it could be something like deal amount on a deal. You might want to open up a deal without an initial deal amount or a provisional one, but as you progress, it needs to be firmed up or it needs to have a payment schedule added that you're not going to have now. You don't need the payment schedule on the day the opportunity is identified, and a sales team might not want to spend the time, planning that out. But you are going to want it at some stage, so you can track that. You can make sure that by the time it gets to quotation, that is actually added in. But again, having that middle ground and that grey area, which can be really effective to just get people using the system and get into the habit forming practice that you need for the CRM. But keeping that visible and having everything set up so you can quickly pinpoint what stages, what deals, what user, what team is actually not holding their end of the bargain. Keep it visible and have those monthly check-ins. Just for example, as an admin, that's what I would start there.
Nice. Can you use anything in HubSpot to sort of force that function?
Yeah, massively. You can set up triggers. So I think I started with it. The CRM itself and the sort of rules you can put in are very broad, and you can go as far to limiting a deal obviously being created without absolutely everything you need. You can allow it to be created and then just limit some of the stage movements based on required properties. You can stop it moving backwards. You can really lock it down. I don't I don't like doing that. That wouldn't be my recommendation to most
Is that
businesses.
because? Well, okay, go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say these came out in the last sort of 12 months. These sort of feature sets for some enterprise businesses with technical sales processes that, with multiple teams interacting with one deal, it can often need that, and you don't want to just leave it to chance because it can really mess up the sort of delivery cycle. But unless that's a specialized use case, I typically avoid recommending that because it really annoys sales teams, and it's HubSpot's the big bad wolf. And I think the point is to get away from pen and paper spreadsheets, skip into other systems, and trying to get people to put as much information as possible in for their sake, but also for the rest of the business to get eyes on what's actually happening. So yeah.
Do you get a lot of? Well, what I'm picturing there from what you said is because my mind went to, well, make it rigid so that we get good data spat out the back of it. But you're right, the user adoption's more key. So if they've
Well,
always had,
yeah, and this is the thing, the general conversation, and of course, before you close a deal or raise a quote, you're going to need specific information, and you can get that as soon as right at the start, maybe in a marketing form. You might get it along the way. That's totally unique to most businesses, and I think, like I say, I like to ask for as little as possible in the early stage, but make sure definitely by the time there's some decision making needed to be done around, resourcing or allocating whatever the product is you're selling, you're going to need those affirmations in there. But I don't. My preference is to hang back on the sort of strict limitations because people just don't log in. And I think good anecdote that I had from a customer I was working with last year, the end of last year, their sales team said this to me directly in a workshop that if that's not a KPI for me to fill in, I'm not going to touch it. Like
right,
I don't care. And they were being open and honest about it. But if we go back to sales teams who are very driven on results and progress, this was tied into their actual commission and bonus structure, you actually having all the details filled in at the right time. And I think they weren't able to close a deal without, property X. They then took that out because there was a lot of pushback and it just dropped off a cliff. If they don't absolutely need to, they're not interested. And I think that's kind of the balancing act you've got to play. Like, what is business critical? What's going to wind people up? We want them to log into HubSpot every day and use the tool. So I'd start low, and then we can use Breeze to enrich data. We can use other tools these days. There's tons of stuff out there, plugins, add-ons, to kind of do some of this backfilling. If we need that, like what sales might think is useless information, we can pull that in ourselves and kind of not put it on the end user to fill in 20 fields in a form before they're even allowed to say they've got an opportunity.
do you over time layer back in some of these controls? Because I imagine, well, one thing I see a lot, and people sort of mention it, are HubSpot user groups, or you see it on HubSpot forums or in the community, that it amasses all this data. So doing what you said there, you've got people just filling in and dumping the information in, which is great. But then it must reach a tipping point where it's too messy.
Yeah, it does. And I think this is where you've got to have that housekeeping. So I do like a blended approach, which is allow as much as it's reasonable to come in. It has to have some controls, of course, it's not a free-for-all, but it can be quite vague at the early stage. As they progress, they're going to naturally add more information before they can progress a deal, or set a company to a certain status. That you're going to have to fill that in eventually, and that works really well. So the closed deals should have everything you need to actually close. What you're going to have at the top end is these prospects, these opportunities that are really vague, might have a bit slightly more sparse data, and you kind of want that to be filled in just to keep them in the CRM and to make sure there's an opportunity. And it might be something that marketing look at, service teams are going to maybe look at that over time. So I think that's where you pull in other enrichment opportunities, other tools, or use HubSpot. But I would then have a dashboard or two per team to say, of all the records created, here's are the ones that are obviously like progressing from a sales perspective, but of everything else that is kind of dormant or warm leads, here's where we're missing data. And we can say, right, Paul's got 50 prospects that is assigned to him that he's created, and 30 of those don't have a company domain or an industry drop down selected. And you can have a bit of fun of it. We call it like a wall of shame, but you can have KPIs, who's on the leaderboard of the least information against the things they've created that aren't progressing as a sale. And that's something that you can kind of gamify with the team and pull out to make sure that those records are as enriched as we need. Because, and it's the same for marketing as well. As you're pulling stuff in, you're going to have companies that go dormant that you might want to pull in a bit more info and learn more about. But yeah, from a sales perspective, I would kind of blend that with more restrictions as they progress, but then some visualizations, reminders, tasks. You can create, we all know, you can have a nice list. You could mail that out once a month of here are all the companies without X property assigned to Paul, and you get that list emailed to you. You get a task set in HubSpot. You've got to go through and update them.
I think that's you've broached on the classic HubSpot best practice or common thing that people overlook. Actually, is that there's little functions like that make it so easy to go and do the simple things that all add up. So, emailing you every morning, it could be these are the people who need that property filling in, or it could be emailed every week, whatever your cadence is. But a lot of these tools don't get turned on and used because people try and make a fancy dashboard, or they dive into the really juicy stuff, or building up the pipeline exactly as they want it, etc., etc. When really you could have it just telling you in your email inbox or on Slack or whatever tools you use.
Yeah,
Andrew needs this filling in.
And again, I'm not a absolutist on the tool doing everything for you. I think the data's there. We can put it, like I say, if you're getting tasks set every week to fill in company names and update this and that, you end up having hundreds of tasks. You tune out to it. The HubSpot notification gets annoying.
Yeah.
You ignore that. If you've got a high volume or even a medium volume, I'd probably avoid that. And it goes back to what I said at the start. Talk to your teams, like open HubSpot, fine, it's there, help them, pull it into a list or an area, have a dashboard to look at as a team, but don't go crazy with the notifications and tasks unless they're really relevant. It's only if there is a deal that is close to closing or something and it's missing something urgent, be mindful of that.
I liked what you said about it's been dormant or been empty for this long. So here's the two things you could do with checking it, because you've forgotten those things. You've moved on. Exactly. So it's
for sure. Yeah.
Not every day like I've got 3 now, I've got 4 now, I've got 5 now. It's these are the ones that actually don't forget these guys.
Fast track to pissing people off when they've just got HubSpot. We have that feedback like, oh, is this thing gonna just email me every day non-stop? Like there's that change curve anyway of a new system. So yeah, I'd definitely be mindful of sending out a million tasks. We talked about the updates last week from the partner product update, and one of them that's come to mind as you've been chatting about that is the sort of sales agent and task manager agent AI features that'll sort of, when your salespeople log in the morning, it'll sift through the things and prioritise all those tasks, so you don't get task blindness or message automation blindness. Sales workspace, I love it. I think that the workspaces in particular are one of my favourite they're not even new, they're kind of just reimagined areas of existing places, and I love those. I think the sales workspace is really powerful for this, and it ties into the data hygiene as well. We can set tasks, we can add custom dashboards per user in one space. So again, it's about enablement and adoption, but giving people one bookmarked place to go every day just to check what my priorities from a sales perspective. Have I got any tasks that can help with data hygiene? And have I got a dashboard at the bottom to see if I'm in the danger zone of being on the board of shame? You can build that experience in really well in HubSpot. And less places to click and find and train people on is always a win. So yeah, I love those.
I think the data bit is key, because as we see these AI features and the agents that are being built in getting stronger and stronger, they're only going to be able to use the data you're feeding them with. So on that theme, so that's a big mistake to avoid. What's another... we've got some questions coming in. Valerie's reshared one, and I can see Frank's asked one, so we'll get to those in a moment. If you are watching and you've got some questions, drop them on the comments, and we'll get to those in a second. So what's the last bit of advice really on common mistakes you see, and then what's the most common mistake you see from working with new customers, and how do they avoid it?
So I'd say one of the more common ones for new people on HubSpot is setting up a masterpiece in their eyes. These automations, tasks, dashboards. It's great on day one. Everyone's super optimistic and hyped, and it's that if you set it and forget it. So that's kind of one of the obvious but common mistakes where not only the fields you're asking for, the limitations, the permissions, whatever, just that whole process, that whole user, like what do I do when I log into HubSpot? What's expected of me as a salesperson? If you're not going back and talking about that regularly and reviewing those automations and tasks being set and things like that, I think that's definitely a common mistake for new users. Probably, again, I'd say maybe having slightly different expectations for different teams. Like you might not be as hard on a marketing team for what they're inputting versus a sales team where there's revenue more closely aligned to it. Just talking from like a top-down business preference. And I think that's a bit of a mistake. I think if marketing can hold themselves to as high a standard as sales often need to, because it's meant to be that aligned handover, there is a lot of pre-fill and stuff that you can get before you hand over to sales. So I'd try and hold every team to a similar level, and that goes for service as well.
I'd say build that out from what's needed for closing that quote and build it out towards marketing. And then also I think a quick fix for that is that we've installed, I know in our team working with Amy, is sort of really, really, really be limited on what free answer fields you put in your marketing forms. And exactly.
They're either just have drop downs, yeah.
If you want to be able to use that piece of data for some reason in the future at scale, don't give them options. Don't give them the option. Do give them option. Don't give them the free text option. Give them set things to choose from. Just got some questions, Andrew. Conscious of time.
Yeah.
So Frank, thank you. Marketing automation is super, but the CRM is really too simple and too fixed in layout for us. When does the CRM become more flexible in a more flexible version? Frank, I don't know what tier of HubSpot he's using, but he's looking for more functionality. Have you got any ways to build up something more flexible that Frank would be wanting with his CRM?
It depends, I guess, knowing the sort of what the future state is and where you're finding those limitations. I would keep an eye on even this year's updates in HubSpot so far. They've really pushed. There is new functionality, but a lot of that is around the flexibility on. I think I've read even lately some of the default properties are editable and clonable, not all. You can do almost anything on the cards these days, custom card development. Out of the box, there will always be limitations, but they've really pushed to open up customization for record views, card layouts. There is activity summaries by AI at the top. You can build out that middle pane with the overview, very custom to what you need. So if you're feeling like you're limited, it'd be great to hear what those might be, because you can, from even at a property level, there's a lot of opportunity to manage the visibility, the editability of those, and have a lot of control over sensitive data as well. So yeah, maybe I'm coming at it from the wrong perspective, as from a HubSpot-like mindset, but yeah, it'd be good to know what that limitations are.
Yeah, maybe reply to your own comment, Frank, and give us a bit more detail, and we'll try and dig into it. In the meantime, Jack Leonard, cheers for the question. We've just upgraded to Marketing Pro this week. What would be your advice as far as quick wins to really sell the upgrade to the rest of the sales and marketing team? So you've upgraded to Marketing Pro.
From starter, I
presume so, yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're going to have a lot more opportunity to build out automations. But maybe start there, maybe look at what, is there anything like a custom coded workflow, something that you're not able to get from another system? more opportunity to build out dashboards and be a bit more flexible with what you're showing those teams. So you can maybe ask the teams that are needing to be brought in, what would you like to see, what would you like to know, and offer some of those insights in a bit more depth.
I think another place to go as well would be checking the product releases on the beta product update tab, the product updates, and
Yeah,
most of the good product upgrades get released to Pro and Enterprise first. So keeping an eye on that will unlock some new functionality and features for you. And if you're adding in a paid marketing hub from scratch, I think that's going to open up a lot more sort of flexibility to, like we work on the client email campaigns together, for example. So you can work with customer side as well as sales.
yeah, for sure.
Okay, Valerie's asked a question. Paul, you and Josie talked about staying organised in HubSpot CRM by archiving properties on last week's podcast. Are there any other small, easy steps? Okay, yeah. Have you any small or easy steps that one could take to make sure the CRM is clean and not clocked up with unnecessary data? One thing, well, we said the one about you said don't use any free answer text on form submissions. I agree with that. I think you can use that in a really, really point solution case. But another one is sort of user permissions. Have you ever gone big on that with clients, sort of giving this team access to this? And
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. If you've got people that are creating their own properties, that's probably a no-no outside of like if you're an admin. Honestly, it's really boring, but I would have an external architecture document when you're talking about fields and properties, having something outside of HubSpot to kind of like, it's almost like a sandbox of we want to maybe add this in, what does that look like as a whole picture? That's a good place to start. So you're not just plugging it in and adding it free will. But if you do have OpsHub or OpsHub Pro, Pro or Enterprise, there's great data quality tools in there. I know we've not got time to go through that, but it's a bit of a cheat code. But you can track property changes, duplicates. Is one person creating a ton of new properties all of a sudden? Has an integration created a lot of new properties? Because sometimes you'll find that your connected apps and integrations are the ones causing the problem with the data that it's feeding in from Dynamics or from some event app, and it's just pushing a load of duplicate contacts and crap in.
I've had that exactly today, funnily enough. It's funny you should say that.
I'd say if you've got OpsHub, you can set up great triggers, reports, they're kind of pre-built for you, and then you can deduplicate by clicking through, and HubSpot will pull stuff in. So now the tools are all there. If you've got that hub, it does the work for you, and checking into that every other day and just seeing what's going on is going to save you all the dashboards that we've talked about needing to set up. You kind of skip ahead, and you can just deal with any oddities that come up directly in that area. So I'd certainly recommend using that. It's probably the quickest tip if you've got access to it.
Nice. And if you don't, I presume that's available on a trial basis as well to see if it does help you.
See what it says. You can have a quick look at it. Yeah.
Cool. Just looking at last couple of bits as we run up to time. If you've got any more questions, do drop them in, especially if you've got the follow-up to that one, Frank. Cheers for everybody who's asked the questions. We've also want to just mention before we go something about that's important for you keeping your CRM fighting fit is stay up to date with what's happening, and a quick touch on lead scoring changes. I imagine people are already using that, but people might not be as HubSpot nerdy as we are and aware of what's coming and what's changing. So what can you tell us about lead scoring in HubSpot?
So there's a new lead scoring model or function. It was traditionally called HubSpot Score, and it's sat in the contact properties. Was a bit hacky. It was always a bit weird. You had two lists, positive, negative properties, and it just kind of added and subtracted. So they've moved to a separate. That's going to be called Legacy, and I think it'll get phased out soon, I believe.
31st of August. Just googled it.
August, right? So that property will go. So
you can't add new ones as well. So if you're using it actively, I've just realised you can't use new ones after May the 1st.
Right. So the new model is a proper lead scoring tool, and it has you can do all the stuff you'd normally do, but you can do a few extra layers of complexity in terms of scoring groups. They've got like degradation of score over time. So if they were a hot lead 2 years ago, it doesn't mean they are today. The legacy score that just stays the same unless you workflow to clear it out. So they can degrade, 10% a month or a week over time, which is really handy. And there is also some filters in there to actually not score a contact until it hits all of a required set of properties before. So you don't start to score somebody and they get halfway. You could kind of say, unless they're in this industry, I actually don't want you to score them at all. And again, you can have more than one lead score model. So again, depending on the types and the segments that you're scoring, you can actually have multiple kind of...
That's very interesting, isn't it?
Ways. It's just how it should be. But yeah, I guess the 31st, you need to maybe... If there are existing leads, hot leads that's a valuable piece of information, you'll want to migrate them over to the new model and kind of re-enroll them to get that up and running. But yeah, it's a good tool.
Cool. Well, thank you, Andrew. We always try and keep these to half an hour. We'll keep an eye on the chat for the next couple of minutes, but I know you're actually off today. You've come on just for this, which I really appreciate. Was that a double booking, or were you forgetting, or...?
I'm just pretty unorganised with my program, let's say.
I did say it might be that. A man after my own heart. Listen, cheers. If you've enjoyed the CRM topic, we are running an event in Oslo in March, in just over a month's time, 27th of March. Nordic Growth Summit is all about maximising CRM data and helping your business grow. So we'll drop a link there. I have to plug that, of course. Only a month out. There'll be people far cleverer than Andrew talking about things in more depth. But no, that was ace. That was spot on. We'll be back with this format in a month's time, the third Thursday of March, I think. Yep, third Thursday of March. I can't remember what date that is exactly, but we've all got a calendar so we can check it. And if you follow us on the page here or subscribe to the newsletter, we'll message you about it too. So cheers, Andrew.
My pleasure. Nice to see you.